This video is going to show you Solar Flawless goes to the deep during the Season of the Wish. For those who just want to see that, then skip to the timestamps. Over that, I can show you what you need to bring to prepare for the Solar Flawless for this dungeon. So, when you acquire the Solar Flawless, you'll be rewarded with this emblem called a Grave Matter. It was really rare when it first came out. Nowadays, not so much, and it's easier to get than ever, probably. So, for those that still don't have this, and I'm aware a lot of you don't, then this is a fantastic build to do the run. Like, it's that good that I think it's the best build possible. For me and my playstyle, at least, it is. So, you need to prepare your builds for the encounters that you're up against. There's 3 main encounters. So, encounter 1. The first encounter, we're going to go like this. We're going to use a Karnstein Armlet build with a solar glaive called Judgment of Calgraph, which is craftable. I highly recommend that you craft this glaive. We used a hand cannon, but we didn't need that. It's whatever. You can rock double special if you want in this build. I'll talk more about that in the run. But that's what we use for the first encounter. The first encounter is really easy, all right? But if you want quality of life, then Xenophage is the best gun for the first encounter. And on top of using a glaive with Karnstein Armlets, it's so easy. You can switch off. First boss, Echtar, right? So we're now switching to Daybreak. The fragments are on screen, but there'll be dim links in the description, so I don't need to go over it all. This will be our survivability build, right? That's with Sunshot, a field prep bipod rocket, and scatter signal, right? You can see that that's our survivability build because I've got a healthy finisher on to maintain armor charges, and I've got scav mods on the boots. We will then do a DPS switch surge when we get to the boss, but we will switch the weapons to Dragon's Breath and a normal hand cannon because obviously Sunshot was taking up the exotic slot. So I'll talk more about that in the run, exactly what I did. But obviously it's with Dawn Chorus, with the Roman Super, not well. And then when we get to the final boss, we do then switch back to Karnstein Armors, but it's now back to Weller Radiance with the build I said before with the Solar Glaive and the hand cannon and what have you. And then we do a DPS switch, right, to this with Sleeper Simmumah still with Apotheosis Veil, right? So there'll be more information about all of this in the run, but that's just showing you the base things that you need. Other things I recommend bringing is a Wish Ender. Bring a Wish Ender for the traversal sections. I think that's handy, but other than that, you're good. So the first encounter, Break the Ritual, as I just said, I'm using the Karnstein Armlets build with Xenophage. I've sped up the footage for editing purposes, and I've cut out the traversal sections in this dungeon to not bloat it too much, although it's already bloated already, to be honest, but at least it's a little less bloated, if you know what I mean. So yeah, we're cutting out the traversal sections. So if you've never done this dungeon ever, then you need to click off the video and go and do it and experience it for yourself. But for most people, you aren't checking it out for that. You're looking to see for extra tips and things that I might have found and tell you all my secrets. Well, I could tell you a couple of them. This first encounter anyways is, as I say, really easy. I just spammed Karnstein Armlets with the Solar Glaive. Now, if you hadn't checked out my original Karnstein Armlets Arc Warlock run when the dungeon first came out, then I recommend that you maybe should for reference, because the run's similar to that. But it might even be better than that. It might even be better than what Arc Warlock was like during that season. And everyone remember how strong Arc Warlock was with the Arc mods? Well, this build is probably as strong as that, because they've done some changes since then. See, I don't play with Karnstein Armlets that much, but I do love this exotic, right? I'll talk more about it, I suppose, when we get to the final boss. Save some tips for that. But as you can see, Xenophage is really good because it makes short work of wizards. It's an accessible, easy weapon for people to use and pick up and play with. That's why I'm using it. You know, I could use Lament, but Lament's a bit risky with the moths. I'll talk about the moths as well, exactly how they work, their AI pattern. I bet you've never ever saw a video about the AI pattern of moths. Well, I actually know it, and other people do as well, but they don't care to elaborate. I'll elaborate exactly how they work, because you need to know about moths in this. There's a lot of moths you've got to take out. Mechanics you should know, right? Break the Ritual. You've just got to follow the green stuff. You've got to kill your ogre, follow the green stuff, right? It's set path. All the paths are predetermined. Like you can go either way. It can be a 50-50 chance each way, right? But once you know the path. Like this path right here, I know exactly where to go. That's just with experience, because I actually used to farm this first encounter for all the weapons. So I have a lot of god roll weapons from from this dungeon, because I farmed this first encounter. So the best thing about this encounter is farming it, right? In a team, just go farm it. 2 minutes a run. You can farm all the good weapons in this, like Cold Comfort and the Stasis GL and whatnot, and the Solar SMG. That's what this encounter is good for. But other than that, like, it's too long. I'm sure we know this. It's a 4-rounder. It should be 3 rounds. You feel like you're just 1 round too many, right? So it drags on a bit. It really does. As opposed to like what we've just had with Warlord's Ruin, where you're right into a boss fight at the start. It's so good. This, it's like ages, and then you got a long traversal section, and then you got lead boots on in the water, and it's taking ages. So that's what I found with Ghost when I returned to it, where I like Ghost, but it's flawed in many ways. It's very mechanic heavy, very good, but there's a lot of flaws to it. I can talk about it more when we get in the run itself, but you can see this is really straightforward, but they have changed Karnstein Armlets. I'm not going to go over it too much in this footage because it's hard for you to see it. I'm just speeding up to show you the encounter because it's part of the dungeon. I've already dissected the video enough. I don't want to not include it at all. This was solo flawless, by the way, so I'm not like, I don't think I'm the type of person to like cut up a video say it's solo flawless, but it wasn't. No, it's because of the 60-minute timer the PS5 has, and I can edit videos longer than 60 minutes. I'm sure you know that because I've solo GMs that are more than 60 minutes. It's just that it's easier when it's less than 60 minutes for me. It's less work. That's all it is. So that's the first encounter anyways. Cinephare's really good. Pop your super when you're dealing with the wizard, and that's all my tips for the first encounter really. Anything you want to use Sunshot, whatever you want. Some restoration's handy though. Obviously you're on solo. So the first boss. So we're using build 5 and 6 for this boss. But we're going to double rally with a separate chest plate. Now I'm going to make it double void. So that you have a chest plate to the side that you've got double void already. So that you can double rally it. Right? I don't think it mattered, but I've done it anyways. So we start with a healing nade and then sunshot. Let's build up restoration stacks. That's your first goal. Right? If you can get a good ignition on one of the knights, perfect. If you can, don't spam too much special ammo, right? Because you're going to need plenty for the wizards. So the thing with this loadout was, I'm not saying that this is the best way of doing it, but I'm just saying that I'm fed up of using Lament in this fight. The general strat would be to use Lament. I'm just saying that I like sort of fed up of using Lament. And there's other options now to sort of get away with this fight. So the mechanics are kill the 3 knights, kill your ogre, that unlocks deep sight in middle. You then look to both sides of the wall and look for your symbols. So this is a mastery of symbols. You need to know these symbols and how they are downstairs. But the boss is downstairs, well, he's not downstairs, he's in the water, right? So you've got to know this area. There's maps on Reddit, so you can just always Google that. If you're somebody that's visual and you look at a map and you're like, oh, I know this now. I'm kind of like that. Or just watch somebody's video. But the thing is, though, my symbols might be different to yours. I don't navigate every single symbol. So if you've never done this, you need to learn the symbols and wipe to see where they all are. You're going to have to wipe. It's a trial and error progress thing. But if you do know the symbols, then that's probably not what you're failing at this boss fight. It's DPS. Without a doubt, you're dying on DPS. You're probably not even dying to knights and ogres. You're probably not even dying to the wizards. You're probably not even dying to that. It's DPS where people struggle. If you don't use Lament, then it's sort of like people are sort of, what do I use? But things have changed since this came out. You don't have to just use Lament. So we're going to obviously get 3 wizards, so I don't want to spend too much special ammo, because here's the thing with the loadout, it's good, but we can't spend any heavy at all really. Well, we can fire 2 rockets off. We're allowing for 2 rockets. the bipod rocket that I have on. But no more than that, because that's good. We need that ammo for our surge switch. But we're going to do it in a very particular way, and I don't know whether this was like... would have been better if I just rocked Dragon's Breath, Fusion and a hand cannon and just didn't do what I did. But I did kind of like the way I did it, to be honest, because there's a bit of a formula with it. So keep Restoration going. When you dump Vestige of Light, you're going to get a timer, of course, because once you kill your first wizard, you need to melt your last two because you're timed. Make sure you got your armor charges. You need 3 minimum charges, which you'll get via your Siphon mods. We're going to swap to a legendary hand cannon, or any legendary would work, and then Arbalest. But we've got the bipod rocket, so we'll fire 2 rockets. One, loop round this pole. Make sure to loop round the pole, and then step in, and then Arbalest. Then do a surge switch. Do all of that, and then I was a little slow here. And then just Healer Nade, and then Dragon's Breath. Hopefully Dragon's Breath chains to the enemies. Whilst you're doing that, you're debuffing him with your super. Don't melee until after your super's done, because then you can activate a second debuff. First debuff was your super, because it debuffs itself, right? Then the Celestial Fire was the second debuff, because if you wasted your Celestial Fire at the start of damage, you're going to get overall less damage. Does that not make sense? You're only going to get 1 debuff. You need to stagger your debuffs out. Revitalize and Blast is so potent that you need to. So do you see what happened there? I didn't just do I'm actually using 3 loadouts, which I think in hindsight this is probably going to make it more difficult for people. But well, maybe not. I don't know, because you can be in Restoration and go in your menu. I think for PS4 users it would definitely be on. I wouldn't recommend this to a PS4 user. They wouldn't be able to surge switch and then swap weapons. They just wouldn't be able to do it. I know, because I've still got a PS4 Pro and I have tested Destiny 2 out on it, and it's terrible. So I do know. So PS4 users, they wouldn't be able to do it in this fashion. They would just have to go lament and just roll with it. But for PS5, next gen users, and obviously PC, then you can be doing this. I feel as though you can. Like, it's not skillful. People see a video of somebody surge switching and they automatically think that this player's good. That's not always the case. Anyone can surge switch. You just need to understand how to keep the armor charges, which people in the past didn't. It's Healthy Finisher. It's a straightforward class ability mod, right? Yellow mod. There's other yellow mods, but Healthy Finisher seems to be the best one to maintain armor charge so it doesn't decay. I know it's decaying now on the left hand side, but it's gonna, once that armor charge is run out, I can then pick up orbs, and it's only 3 orbs. I only need 3 orbs. I haven't got any heavy handed on or anything like this. Just let Sunshot make all your orbs that you want. But also we need to make plenty of ammo for this strat to work, because you're sort of using 2 DPS weapons, whereas the Lament strat is just, you know, Lament, which means it saves up special weapon ammo to melt wizards, because we're not on a Titan or a Hunter that can melt enemies with abilities, unless we were on Sunbracers, but that we're not doing the Sunbracers build in this vid, although it would be interesting though. But yeah, so we're relying on Sunshot for the ag clear, and then the Scatter Signal to melt the Knights, the Ogre and the Wizards, but then also to assist with damage. But we don't need full ammo of Scatter Signal. I would say 10-12 shots were good enough. You're gonna get 3 Dragon's Breath shots because you've from your bipod rocket swap. This allows you to melt your Knight, but then still have the loyalty of one-shotting his shield with Arbalest. I still think this is a good strat because it stops him in his tracks. His AI pattern is completely changed because you've broken his shield. If we didn't have this, there's a chance of death with the Dragon's Breath damage rotation, because if you Dragon's Breath him and his shield is taken away, if he comes up close to you, the Dragon's Breath shot that's stuck to him will kill you, even if you're in a super. There's a risk of it. So I didn't fancy that, like, you know, you have everything done perfect and then Dragon's Breath kills you. That's when because he's ramming down with his super, isn't he? Well, if you use Arbalest, this stops that. So that's what gave me the idea for this, and it works. It's an easy solo 4 phase. It's potentially solo 3 phase as well. Although you'd have to be really on point with everything and quicker with everything. But yeah, I think it is doable. I think at least. And there's other ways of doing this as well. Like I said, this isn't the only way of doing this. After you've melted your first knight, you're going to get wizard. You're going to get that vestige of light. You're on a timer now, so you can't afford to be messing around. In between fusion rifle shots, keep an eye on your restoration on the left-hand side. So be keeping an eye on that. And obviously keep an eye on your armor charges, because healthy finish is going to consume... Can sometimes, when you crush a ghost, sometimes it consumes the armor charge, but sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of weird. But just make sure you've got that 3 blocks and your restoration's quite healthy, whilst DPS and your wizards, which is going to be with scatter signal. Don't use any heavy at all. You're not allowed to. Scatter signal's job. Before we get to the last vestige, we'll do our swaps to RB and a hand cannon. Rocket wasn't reloaded. That's a small error, which is going to cost us time. 2 rockets loop round pillar, arbalist, then swap. Right? We'll do a healing nade. That's what that's there for, as a backup. You always have that. Generally you will. I always start DPS with sort of a healing nade, or just about my cooldowns around about there. It's also going to be a little RNG with the amount of ignitions you sort of get, because we're not using like the best fragments for Dragon's Breath, because we're using like Ember of Solace and stuff like this, but you kind of want Ember of Solace, so you've got to then pick a path of, do you want better restoration or do you want better DPS? And if you know, it's sort of like, well, just better restoration, because Ember Solace does make a difference, by the way. According to what other people might say, no, it does. It doubles up your restoration. It actually does with Empyrean. I don't know why somebody said it doesn't. Like, what a ludicrous thing. It does. It definitely does. I've tested it with and without. It's a huge difference. I think it's worth it. Especially, restoration is the name of the game for these types of dungeons, right? This one, Warlord's Ruin, they're all just infinite enemy spawn, right? It's the name of the game. So you run a healing build. That's generally the consensus. Depending on how good you are, means that you can sacrifice some healing abilities to your build to therefore run other things, but it depends on how comfortable you are with the dungeon and stuff. So like I say, just we're trying to kill as much ads as we can as well, because we've got to farm ammo up, right, for the bipod rocket. We've got to farm up a bit. So top marks for, I think this, it's accessible in terms of like doable, the rotation, double rocket, arbalist, then do a surge switch. But what's not the best is the ammo economy of this loadout isn't like the absolute best. But field prep, if you do have a field prep bipod rocket, it does help. We're basically doing the old loadout switching, which by the way used to be where you get full ammo 1-to-1. Well, not one. I don't know if it was 1-to-1, but it was. Yeah, I think it was 1-to-1 actually, because it would then, if you swap to like Leviathan's Breath with a bipod rocket, you'd have full Leviathan's Breath ammo or somewhere near, which they patched that, but they can't patch what I'm doing because they're giving you, the game's acting correctly. It gives you a portion of the ammo, which is 3 rockets. So we went from 13 rockets because we had 15, we fired 2 with surge switch, we then get 3. That might not sound like a lot, but in a damage rotation, that's nearly 50% of Dragon's Breath ammo capacity. It's 7 total normally, right? Without double rallying on a banner, it's 7. If we can get 3, that's like a whole rotation of damage, like 30 seconds, which that's what this is. So I was like, that's fine it's fine to loadout switch like this, because you're going to get plenty of Dragon's Breath for the DPS that you're doing anyways. So we're best of both worlds, being able to use Arbalest and Dragon's Breath and still maintain enough Dragon's Breath, just enough, which you can, by the way, do this with Lament as well. So you can do the Arbalest trick that I did, exactly the same, but just have Lament on, and you'll get 30 Lament ammo, which is, by the way, enough to deal with this boss after Super is done. This only works if you're using a Roman Super. It won't work with Well of Radiance, because Well of Radiance counts on you having plenty of ammo. but the rotation is, a lot of it's to do with ability damage, really. And then you're just maintaining it, the back end of damage with your scatter signal and your debuff and your dragon's breath. That's the idea of it. Whether to say, if I was to come back and do this, would I do it the same? I don't know about this one, but I would definitely do the final boss fight the same, in terms of the build that I used. So this actually went south. So can you see what happened? I lost my restoration, then I popped a nade at the wrong time, so I've lost it again. Right? And I'm low on time for Vestige of Light. So this is the only part of the fight where it was like, okay, this isn't that good. Healthy Finisher procs, so you can see how good Healthy Finisher can be when you actually do need it to proc and you haven't got any restoration. This is actually really good gameplay in terms of coming back from adversity, coming back from a bad thing that happened to me, or bad play. I've ended up playing bad, right? And then I'm like, oh, I've messed up here. And then coming back. We've literally got a few seconds and we've got to do a swap yet. PS4 users aren't going to do that in that time. We got the swap just in time, so we've saved the run. Right? So we'll do our general 2 rockets. Do our Arbalest. Surge switch to build 6. He does barricade like that, and that's things like that can make you lose damage. All these little things not taking your knight out quick enough. Because DPS starts. DPS doesn't start when the shield goes down. DPS starts when the guy, it says Echtar rises. This is when damage starts, not when the shield is taken. Which I've had problems over the years with, not problems, but like sort of a disagreement with how they start and damage phases on bosses. Spider the Watcher's a bad one for this, shooting the eyes on a Kelos. The DPS starts when you shoot eyes, not after. It should start after you've completed that task. So DPS for this fight should have a timer, a clear timer on the left hand side, and that should start when boss's shield is taken, not like not beforehand. Because then this is like forcing team loadouts, especially team loadouts, to run Arbalest to one-shot the shield. So it's causing a bit of a mini problem with the dungeon, just because they've added shields to these bosses, and not many dungeon bosses have shields in a certain manner, because once you do the mechanic, shield goes down. But in this dungeon, it's slightly different. I've sped up the footage from here because I've literally told you all the tips I can really about it. This run went okay for damage wise. Like I said, there wasn't really many mistakes, just in terms of only that wizard section that we had where we were close. But other than that, like I said, this fight's not bad at all. You can get the damage really quick, even if you don't 4-phase or 3-phase. Then you 5-phase and in 25 minutes, which for a boss like this isn't too bad. You get into damage rotations really quick. There's still a bit to do, you know, with the underwater section and stuff. Just make sure you're spamming your jump button, because even though you are slowed, you can go faster and beat him. Obviously, if he hits you, your pressure rising is gone. That pressure debuffs, the bar's gone, and it's a chance of death. So you need to know that underwater section really well. Once you do, the rest of the fight's pretty easy, and you just need to figure out what rotation you're doing. You could do Legend of Acreus in a Well of Radiance. I could do Well of Radiance with the exact build I used. Could do it that way. Right, I could do some braces. We could go back to Arc Warlock and try it with Vesper, and then switch to Chaos Reach. Geomag Stabilizer, sorry. So there's all sorts of different ways you can do it, but I think this was a decent one because Sunshot excels in this. Scatter Signal does well clearing the major targets, and I can still use Dragon's Breath and Arbalest in the same setup, so it's pretty good. So we'll slow it down just for the last final phase. Obviously he's weak enough. We didn't really need all this heavy that we had, to be honest. The reason why we loop around that pillar like that is so that he doesn't hit us with his attack, which actually can almost one-shot you. And sometimes if you're weak, you'll die to it. Try and jump up in the air like that as well. It seems to be, because if he pops a shield or a barrier, right, you're going to lose damage. Your super will break his barrier, his tower and barricade, but you'll lose damage with your super, and it's so valuable each swing of that attack. is so valuable to your damage. So jump up in the air. It's the best thing you can do. So like I said, I cut out the traversal sections because I don't feel as though this is going to give you it. Like, there's nothing I can commentate on the traversal sections to really help you other than use Wish Ender. Use a machine gun if you want. Play it safe because there's chances of deaths there as well. The wizard section, you can use a Roman soup to bypass them. But I don't need to include that in the video because it isn't helping you with it, right? Which that's what the goal of the video is. So it doesn't really, it makes no impact on the run in terms of my video. In terms of, is it going to make it better for people? No, it's not. It's just going to make the video longer and harder to watch. So we're now swapped to Karnstein. So now I can talk more about Karnsteins and glaives and stuff. So I don't know when it was. Is it 1 or 2 seasons ago? They keep changing glaives and they keep changing Karnsteins. They've changed glaives quite a lot, but with Karnsteins, I believe it works with finishes as well. But why would you need to finish so much? You only finish like your ghosts and stuff like that, but you're not finishing general enemies when you can just glaive one-shot them. So I'm sure you know the mechanics of the fight, but I'll go over them to remind you if you forgot. So you've got to link the chain. It's a chain in middle, right? Deep sight will allow you to see the chain. Oryx's body is on the map. Different parts of his body will glow green like this, which is randomized. You get 3 points. 2 of them are randomized. One is his heart or his rib cage is always center and it's always in the chain. The golden rule is you're not allowed to start in mid for the first chain link. You have to do one of the other 2. You then have to, this is from the Witch Queen campaign, look through the hole with your weapon. The glaive works really well because you can guard. You can put your guard resist up and get that Witch Queen picture in the hole. Because that's what you're doing. That's all you're doing. Look, so you get making the chain. But you can never start with mid. Well, at least that's what it was when it first came out. You can never start with mid. So you start with another chain first. Whichever one. But just remember which ones you got. Have a little name for each one. So like if I've got awkward ones, like these are 2 awkward ones. So in my own mind I'll say, oh, it's the 2 awkward locations. Right? If it's hill, right, well it's top hill or it's mid hill. Or it's all the way at bottom. Right? I don't start calling it by his knee and stuff. Right? I'm not that, sort of nerdy about it. I just know, when I'll sort of just make sure you've got a name for each place so you know where you're going. That is it. Then establish your symbols because you're making the symbols. Once you've completed the chain, you get 3 symbols outside. So it's the same symbols from the first boss fight. So the way I do DPS, and there's different ways of doing this, but since what I've just told you, the mechanic that his heart or his rib cage is up every time, this means you can DPS from middle every time. The key is to dunk middle last. Now, the 3 areas outside the map contain a guardian, a sentinel, a hunter, and a stormcaller wizard. Each one will be randomized. There's no way of you knowing which zone has what until you get there. So, the first thing that you do is look up and see what symbol it is. Right? And then remember the symbol that was middle. Forget about the other 2, just the middle symbol. Whatever that symbol was, if that symbol happens to be the first guardian that you go to, you do not kill the guardian. You don't kill him. If you're going to repeat the way I do it, which I recommend that you probably should because there's actual reason behind all this. So I recommend that you do, unless you're just going to get flinched out of damage. And that's the biggest thing. The biggest enemy against you in this is flinch. It's not moths, it's not acolytes, it's not the sentinel, it's not this, it's not that. It's flinching you out of DPS. And it's really bad, like especially when you're trying to snipe him or linear him. Linears are more favourable because at least there's a bit of charge time with him. So that's the biggest thing. But you can melt your guardians like so, as long as you've got close to melee proc. So on the left hand side, we have close to melee proc by getting a projectile shot kill, and then you can extend the duration with light wings. Remember with glaives that you can speed up their animation by holding guard whilst you swing. So for PS5, that is hold L2 and then press R1. Hold L2. You can actually hold both because you can do full auto melee now. So you can actually hold L2 and R1 and this is full auto. On PC, whatever your bindings are, well, whatever your bindings are. And so on and so forth. So you can do that and speed up the animation. I don't do this all the time. Sometimes because it's 3 swings. Its combo of the glaive is 2 quick stabs and then like a longer stab, right? But that longer stab is it reduces the DPS of the glaive. It reduces its actual damage when you can just do the light stabs over and over quicker, right? So that is the most important thing you need to know, and you're going to keep getting Cure. So you're getting 2 things. You don't even need to use you barely need to use your healer nade. But I have it as a backup healer nade because I don't want to use a damage nade because I don't really need it for anything. I do it the boss. I need a damage nade for the boss. But right now we're just glaving like a madman and we're prepping. So we've just prepped the Stormcaller there, right? When I say prep, I mean kill all the ads and leave him 1 shot or a 3rd HP. This is how I do it. If you do it like this, you can't fail. You can't fail on this run. You can't fail on it. I find it very hard to believe if you failed with Karnstein Armlets on a glaive. This is better than Solar Titan. It's that good. There's a lot of Solar Titan mains and we know why because of the Bonk Titan, and it's still super strong even though they nerfed the hammer. Right, but what's the hammer Titan's weakness? Well, that you can lose the hammer. And if you lose the hammer and use a damage style nade, you have no restoration. Guess what? With this build, I could run a damage nade and still have restoration. Because all I need to do... I can't lose my glaive. I can't throw it and lose it. Good job that we can't, right? But I can't lose it. So this is better than Solar Titan, in my opinion. Because of that little fact. For this run anyways. I do honestly think it's better than Titans. I do. It's so easy. It's just so easy. There's no chance of losing a hammer, and it's the same playstyle as a hammer, minus the sunspots. So what we're doing now is we're prepping the boss room. We need to be able to have no ads alive during DPS. So how we do this is wait for the Acolyte spawn. Actually wait for it. You saw me just before. I was waiting for it. You kill them as quickly as you can. You time yourself. You do it as quickly as you can. Acolyte spawn, I believe it's a 45-second timer. Last time I timed it, it was like 45 seconds. This was a while ago now, though. It's something around there, right? Then you go to the Guardian that you've prepped. Don't kill him too quick, because if you are ahead of your Acolyte rotation, you will end up dying waiting for them, because you have a 60-second vestige timer. So you need to be able to get the sweet spot for them to spawn at about 40 or 30 seconds, no less than 30 or 35. So look at the time on left. They've spawned already. So I'm actually a little late. I actually took too long with the wizard. But there's a knack to getting the time right. But this is fine. This is totally fine. I'm not like late as in it's going to mess up too much. But I've got the timing exactly right. But here's what I do wrong. Watch this. This is the craziest thing. I've lost the plot. This game makes me badly. Like, look at this. So I've actually... This is a solo 4 phase, by the way. So we've actually now screwed our entire damage phase up. We have no ammo because we've surge switched to the wrong build. I thought I would just post this anyways because it ends up being a solo 4 phase really comfortable. Like really comfortable. But can you believe that it's so easy solo 4 phase? So if I solo 4 phased and didn't do any damage on my first phase, this means that you can solo 3 phase this. Because look, I've got no ammo. So yes, anyone can do the surge switching, like I said before, but anyone can do what I've just done. I've just done a big mistake. So I've surge switched to build 5 as opposed to build 2. I forgot that I was on the top row as opposed to 5 and 6. So that is a huge mistake. So, but you know what I thought? I thought, you know what? I'm going to try and see if I can still solo 4 phase this fight. I'll just go on with it. Because it's solo flawless still. Solo flawless doesn't tell you how many phases you did. Do you turn the emblem over and does it tell you how many phases you did? Obviously, physically can't, 'cause it's a digital item. I'm just being sarcastic, but you know what I mean, right? It doesn't tell you any of that stuff. It just says that you solo flawless the dungeon at some point. Some of you legitimate, some of you legit, some of you not so legit. Some of you done it when the crafting and bug was up, which you should never have done that. You're ruining your experience by doing it. I was annoyed by people who done that. You shouldn't have done it. You should just go and do it properly as it's intended. I know the bosses are tanky, but just play it as it's intended, because you're just cheating yourself. But that's what I was saying. So I was just wanting to see, right, well, I'm just going to see how good this build is, because I haven't got to show you it yet, but you'll see it on the next couple of phases. We do incredible damage on phase 2 and 3. We have to, though. We have to, because phase 1 was messed up, because we had no ammo. If anything, it shows you that Dragon's Breath isn't a good option for this boss. And I've done some testing with Dragon's Breath on this, and it isn't a good option because it doesn't have tracking. When you're fighting this boss, you need a rocket with tracking if you're going to use a rocket. Now, I know people that, craft and god roll bait and switch rockets and reconstruction and all this stuff. Alright, try and use your reconstruction bait and switch Apex Predator in this. Come back to me how good that was. And I can tell you that it was rubbish. Because I know, because I tried it myself. You need to have a track and rocket because this boss isn't favourable to you, to DPS. So you need to use weapons that are favourable. Probably the most accessible weapons, Grand Overture, right, Xenophage. Those are the two most accessible weapons to DPS this boss. And Leviathan's Breath, sort of Leviathan's Breath, but not on console. That's more PC. If you're on PC, you use Leviathan's Breath because it chunks, does more damage on PC because it's tied to frame rate. I believe that's still the case. Someone tell me if it's not the case, but it has been bugged on PC. I'm assuming it's still like that it does more damage linked to frames. So, yeah, it just shows that, as I said, Dragon's Breath isn't the option for this in terms of damage. Even if I did have ammo there, obviously, I wouldn't have done enough damage. This boss is around 11 million HP. It's there or thereabouts, right? So if you're doing like 2 mil or something, or 2.2, it's nowhere near enough. And bear in mind, we've got Solo Operator. So you should be doing way more damage than that. You should be doing at least 3 mil per phase. I'm saying that, and I've only done 300k. But obviously that was a huge mistake. But it's, like I say, you're going to see on the next damage rotation how to actually do it. The solo free phase is still kind of tight anyways, so in reality, I know I have messed up with my surge, but in reality I've actually lost no time. If, because if I hadn't solo free, say if I did try and go for the solo free phase, and the boss had a tiny bit of health at the end, then that is the same time as what this run is. Even though I've messed up. Because there's no difference. There's only a time difference if you cut down your phases. That's why that is the prism that you need to make decisions when you're solo flawless in dungeons and when you're doing damage rotations. The prism is, if you run this build over that build, is it gonna cut down your phases of damage? If the answer's no, it's probably not worth it. If the answer's yes, then the next question is, how accessible is it and how realistic is it that you will repeat this every time that you get to the final boss? If the answer is that probably most of the time you will, then you'll go with it. If the answer is where it's a really complicated damage rotation, you probably don't want to be doing it anyways. Because it's that whole old thing on solo flawlesses, things don't always go your way. Right? You've got people testing DPS rounds, right? And saying, look at this DPS that I've just done. Do you realise they farmed that rotation to get that said number? Do you realise that they've actually practiced, particularly to get as much damage on that boss as possible, and they farmed to get good at that? So are you willing to, not before you get your soul flawless, are you willing to damage test over and over and over to then get that perfect damage and say, right, if I replicate that 3 times in my soul flawless, I get it? Do you really think that's going to happen like that? In reality, that's not going to happen. In reality, something will definitely happen to you on your soul flawless if you're not an expert at the game. Like I mean expert. If you're not an expert, there's something that's probably going to go against you. Thralls are in your way for some reason. You know, this has happened, or you've missed more shots on a DPS phase because the boss is teleporting and his crit spots all over the place. There's always going to be something going against you. So I'm just saying for the average player that you can go and watch those damage rotations of people pulling off miraculous damage on certain things, not just this dungeon but anything. But just remember, they're practicing all day, every day to get such rotation. Right? You'll see people damage test on Grasp of Avarice, Ogre. Right? Look at this DPS, and they'll label the video, this DPS, look at this. And like they've literally got a teammate popping a well for them. They've got this person giving them a tether. And they're claiming that this loadout does this rotation. It's like, well, in reality, none of that actually exists. What they've just showed you there, because when you solo, you can't have a well and a tether, unless you're part Warlock, part Hunter. That doesn't exist. So, you see what I'm saying? You need to start looking at accessible stuff. Right? Once you've learned all your accessible loadouts, okay, fair enough, start learning on your higher difficult damage rotations. But for more average players who aren't playing as much, then you don't need, you need to be more accessible with your stuff. So we need to do ads clear. We're prepping the room. You saw I waited for that damage rotation. There's a 45-second timer. So we need to kill them as quickly as possible. You can't mess around there. I'm doing it on purpose, going quick. Right? Now, I know I didn't use my hand cannon, but I could have done. And you could do double special, but this would limit the amount of glaive ammo that you use, and you need a bit of glaive ammo to fill up its shield, because it's very useful against moths. Which I'm gonna go over the moth AI thing after this damage rotation, because I need to actually commentate a damage rotation. Right, so we waited a little bit. I'm biding my time. Remember, it's a 45-second timer for Acolytes. So I feel as though I'm sort of slightly ahead of the curve for Acolytes. I have a feel for it. I'm not just counting in my head. I'm not counting in my head, but I sort of have a feel for it. I'm like, right, Acolytes should be spawning in the next probably 5 to 6 seconds. And again, I'm not counting it. So they've spawned. So we're actually, they've just spawned. You can tell that they've actually just spawned. And you can actually hear the audio cue. Because I'm doing commentary, I can't hear any audio on the video. But you can actually hear that audio cue when they spawn. The goal, as I say, though, again, is to melt. Throw a healing aid, why not? Because it doesn't matter, because you're going to surge swap to a build that doesn't have healing aid on it. Anyways, right, then you're going to imbue Celestial Fire to debuff, and then you've got an Apotheosis Veil ability buff. Right, the boss, what did I tell you before? What's this boss doing? How am I meant to crit that? This is exactly what I was talking about. Things don't go your way always to pull off perfect things. With this boss at least. There's not a lot of structure to him. Right? But the fact of it is, we're not using Arbalest. We're using Apotheosis Veil fusion nades to take down the barrier. And this damage rotation was... It was alright. It was 7.5 out of 10. That was it. It was how it should go. But the next rotation's like... even better. But did you notice none of the thrall pushed? Really? The reason for this is because the well is placed in Oryx's ribcage. If you creep that well out just a little bit, all the thrall push. You know what that means? You're going to get flinched and it's going to mess you up. You're not on a Titan to throw a hammer for a sunspot. You're on a Warlock. You haven't got such things. So you need to pop that well far back as you can. This positioning changes the AI path of the thralls. This means that they're not pushing you. Maybe they spawn in packs. It's 3 around the map. There's like 3 packs of 3. I think that's what it is. Well, 1 pack will push you sometimes, no matter what. But if you're so far back in that ribcage, then the other 2 packs won't. So at the worst case scenario is 1 pack pushes you, which is fine. That's only a little bit of a loss of damage, right? Because if you're not damaging the boss, then you're damaging the thrall, which therefore you're losing damage, aren't you? I'm speeding up the footage from here now. It was just to sort of get the video less than 60 minutes. But I'm not going to speed up DPS and stuff. But I'll talk about the moths. Right? I've talked about these at length in the past when Witch Queen type content was more popular. At the minute now it's not, because obviously we're in a different era. So you're not up against moths very often, apart from when Lightblade's the GM and stuff. So with the moths, right, they have 2 AI pathing, right? So when they spawn from the boss, because that's where they actually spawn in at, but some acolytes actually spawn in with them also. It's not just the boss that spawns them in. Sometimes an acolyte will spawn with a moth attached to it. If there's a ton of acolytes in mid, and there's some moths attached to them, let's say there's 3 or 4, if there's plenty of ad clear to do, forget about the moths, because the moths are going to seek out allies. They're going to either try to heal them or shield them. Yes. So even if there's 2 acolytes left, right? Let's say that, and then there's 4 moths. Well, when you kill that final acolyte, what's going to happen? The 4 moths are going to explode on you. Right. Got it. So then that's what you do with this is kill that final acolyte and immediately guard with the glaive. This will help you resist the moths so easy. You'll see me do that at times. Just put my shield up. So it's the ultimate defensive tool against moths. Because, like I say, but what the point of it is, you don't need to seek out and kill all the moths. You don't need to, because when you kill one acolyte and it's got a moth, it's going to seek another one. They're not going to enrage on you. It's not like they're a bomb and they just explode on you. They'll go and they'll enrage when there's no more enemies left. Right? That's how it works. That's how this works. So that's the deal with that. The point of it is you don't need to shoot them. But when the boss spawns them all up, and when you've done your chain, try to shoot 1 or 2 then, yeah. But if in doubt, just put your guard up and let them come to you, or outrun them. You're going to have infinite restoration anyways. This was actually too soon. We've done another mistake. So there was 2 mistakes with cert switching. We've actually not got to DPS yet, so I'm kind of crazy in this run. But we'll have to refarm armor charges up. I was too eager. But the final Guardian is prepped. So I can make orbs 1 or 2 ways. I have got the osmosis hand cannon, so if I feel like doing that, I will. Or I'll just get double kills with the glaive, which I'm just going to do that at the minute. So, like I say, you could add something else to the loadout. You could even do blind and nades if you really wanted. But just know that your glaive ammo is going to... Remember, when you run double special, it splits your green in half. This works, I suppose, if you have a special weapon equipped that you're not using and it's full. That means you'll get full ammo to the weapon that you are using. But then what's the point of using double special if you're just there to have it full? So I could have went a sniper in the kinetic slot. But my whole strat was that I didn't really need to do that anyways, because I'll explain it to you. So Sleeper holds 12 or 13 shots at base, right? But we have 16 every phase. Why is this? Well, because we're double, we have a spare chest plate that we swap to, and we have this every phase, so we have 16 shots, right? And sleeper's very forgiving because if you do body shot, it's not going to be like a normal linear where you body shot and you lose. You are going to lose damage. I'm not going to lie. You're going to lose quite a bit. Like if I'm using a debuffed, a fully surged debuffed sleeper shot, it's like 190k for me. Where if it's a body shot, it's like 120. Like that's with no. I think that's with no debuff or nothing, right? But then your normal surge shot's like 160. So it does make a bit of difference. But if out of 16 shots, maybe 3 of them are body shots, that's going to be fine for your damage. But if you were to hit all 16 crits for every wave, that's solo free phase territory. That's what that would be, right? So we'll debuff first. Like we Celestial Fire then well because we get our melee back with Apotheosis Veil, and then we'll just spam as many nades, right? We'll actually save a nade for back end because this has access to more debuffs over the course of damage. We've got another debuff which we're going to use in a minute, Celestial Fire. So we're going to use that now. I think we've got 6 shots. Yeah, so for the last 6 shots will be the debuffed shots. Sometimes take your time with Sleeper because sometimes the boss will get staggered and you might have to re-aim and re-center. Do that if you want. This extra damage at the end actually really helped out a little bit, that fusion nade. Fusion nades do really a lot of damage. Almost like Starfire Protocol. How it used to be. Right, but it's on a smaller basis now. You get 8 seconds. I think you get 8 seconds with Apotheosis Veil as opposed to it used to be just the entire well. So Apotheosis Veil is the top pick for this. If you don't want to run Arbalest and you just want to run something to DPS with like Sleeper or something, then swapping to Apotheosis is a good idea because it acts as your barrier. It's acting as your barrier type thing, but it's not only that. It's good because it's debuffing the boss quite a bit. You've basically got access to debuffs the entire time. So you see our damage now, right? The boss has got a 3rd HP left. Basically. Probably less than that. Because we had 2 good damage rotations, phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 1 was non-existent. We didn't even damage the boss. So look at the HP. That just speaks to you on how good this loadout is and how bad I was for surge switching to the wrong build. But it happens, and I bet it's happened to people out there. That's why, if you notice, I mean, I still got it wrong, but I generally have my loadout menu less busy. If you have it too busy, if you have every slot filled, it's like when you switch to it, it's like sometimes you're like, which one is it? And you haven't got time to say which one is it because you're in the middle of something. Yeah? So it's like you need to be on point with what you're going to swap to. So having it less busy is easy. But obviously it hasn't paid off for me. But, generally, what I should have done is redone the run. But I wasn't too fussed because imagine if I'd redone the run and I did go for solo free phase and the boss had like a little bit of HP. Guess what? That run would be the exact same time as this one. So it wouldn't have mattered. And things do happen with the boss, like you saw before. The boss floats up in the air, like right above. How are we getting crits? I feel as though like Ghost, mechanically, it is good. But the boss isn't. The boss should have been something else. Like it's a wizard. How many times have we fought a wizard now in the game? How many wizard bosses is there? Shattered Throne. Scarlet Keep. Right? The seasonal stuff. How many times are we up against wizards? Like this boss has no identity. Right? It has no identity really. Like Warlord's Ruin, like that's the way that's designed, it is sort of on similar level to mechanic wise, but it's just in a more condensed amount of time. And the whole arena is based on you doing little bits of burst damage and then having a huge damage rotation, and then there's a final stand. I feel as though like a final stand mechanic is miles better than fighting a guardian, because a guardian requires you to finish them, and they have shields. This isn't as good to play. A final stand mechanic would just make elevate this fight. So maybe you transport to another map part of the map, and then you've got to do a bit more damage, and that way everyone's cleared on final stand. Because when it first came out, people were actually soloing it, and then they couldn't manage to kill the ghost, and then they would res, and then they would have to do it again. Like, I'm on about your week one Ghost of the Deep experience. Like, if you weren't there to try it solo, then you missed out, because it was like huge. Like, seriously, it happened to me as well. On before I got my solo flawless, that week one experience, I couldn't physically get the res without dying, right? So it was like, I'm going to have to let them res up. So then I had to do another phase on top of the 5 I'd already did. So now you're looking at like a 55-minute boss fight, nearly hour. And then you end up having to kill the boss twice in one run. It just doesn't look good or feel good. Whereas with the Warlord's Ruin, I feel as though you're not scammed anywhere. Well, you are scammed a little bit with the melee guys. I'll just go over damage though. So like I said, we're going to spam a bit of nades. The Thrall have pushed. We'll put a nade at our feet. I know it's a bit of a waste, but I don't want them flinching me too much. So, like I said, one pack can push. But we need to focus on getting our crits. Even if we take a little bit longer to get the crits, as long as it's crit damage, right, then we'll seal the deal for the solo 4 phase. Like, which should have been solo 3 phase. But that was the run on this for the solo flawless. Like I said, it's probably easier than ever. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.